Jazz, the Mammoth, and the Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. When it comes to sports in Utah, we've got you covered. This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim LaComb, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Scott Garrard, the coach, Tim LaComb. Hope you're having a tremendous Wednesday. Time to talk a little college football. Dan Wolken, kind enough to hang out with us from Yahoo Sports. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good. So is our congressional bill, is it on life support? Does it have a pulse? If it was in the ambulance, what condition would it be in right now?
Yeah, I mean, I try not to hang on every word that's coming out of the congressional staffers, and certainly a lot of my colleagues are in regular communication, getting sort of the minute-by-minute updates. I'm more of a tell me when you have the baby, because I don't really trust, deadlines create pressure for sure, but they also create a lot of fake urgency. It is true that the Senate is going on recess soon, and so, if they don't get it done, it creates a whole domino effect of timing issues, and obviously the election in November is one where, you really, as you get closer to that, it's really difficult. So they feel like they're under a time commitment. The SEC and the Big Ten have been stringing it along. I don't really know, what's going to happen. And even if they do get it on the floor, and even if they vote for it in the Senate, then it's got to go to the House. And I don't know. I try to be a little removed from all the machinations of it.
Dan, you've been doing this a long time, and we've been talking about this era that we've been in the last few years, and just trying to figure out a way to get out of it and kind of stabilize things. What do you feel like the ultimate end game is here? I mean, do you feel like it's inevitable we're headed toward a major big super conference that the big players kind of dictate? Or do you feel like, college football can survive as it is?
Well, it's a really complicated question because it depends so much on what happens in the media rights part of the business. And it's really unpredictable because every 5-6 years things change so much. And you look at 2030, that's kind of a year people have circled where some of the big deals start to come up for renegotiation, So the Big Ten and the SEC, if you look at the last 2 times they've been through TV rights negotiations, that's when they've expanded, because expansion drives more value, drives more money. And you look at what's happening in the congressional bill right now, and there's been a lot of concern with the SEC and the Big Ten about a provision in the bill that limits their ability to expand. So that's been sort of one of the big issues that they've had. So I don't know where all that's going to come out in the wash. I don't think anything's inevitable, but I do think at some point in the future, and it may be, after we're all retired and not doing this anymore, I don't really know. The biggest brands in college sports and college football are going to look at the lesser brands they're in the conferences with and say, why are we sharing the money with you? We're Ohio State. Why should we be subsidizing Purdue's value? That kind of thing. And maybe they do join up and there's a 40-team league or whatever. I don't know. I just know media rights and television money dictate so much of it.
So when you have a guy like, and I call games for Utah State, so I've been around Josh Pastner a little bit over the last year, and the dude is Barnum and Bailey. Like, I love him. I love interviewing him because that dude is a salesman. He's always in sales mode. And what he said about UNLV being for sale, and I know that they had to walk it back a little bit, but what he said, if you just listen to what he said, he's not that far off, and it's not that bad of an idea. I actually kind of applaud the way he, put him and his university and his basketball team out there.
Yeah, well, I think everybody understood when he said that, or at least everybody who follows college sports super close, that when he said buy a team, he wasn't literally saying we're selling UNLV basketball to the highest bidder. He's talking about they need a sugar daddy. They need somebody to come in and write them a big check so they can get players. And everybody's in that position. And if you have one person who does that, one person who's capable of, for a program at UNLV's level, spending $10 to $12 million on a roster, well, that person is essentially the owner. They're the de facto owner, and they're going to have a say in a lot of the decisions. They're going to be sitting front row. They're going to be, in that space. And you come to find out, because I talked to Josh on Monday, there's a lot of people who have a lot of money who would love to be in that position, because I don't know if it's ego. I don't know if they expect some kind of return on investment. But there's a lot of people who, maybe they can't quite afford to get in the game, or they, for whatever reason, it's not like you can just go buy an NBA team or whatever. Like it's hard to do. But, if you can go stroke a check for $15 million and sort of be the main guy who's in charge of one of these college programs, maybe that's just something you really enjoy, a really fun and expensive hobby for somebody who's got way more money than they could spend.
Dan, do you think the expanded playoff has made the regular season more interesting, or do you think it's diminished some of the urgency that we were used to every Saturday?
Well, I think so far it hasn't really diminished it very much at 12. I don't know what would happen if we go to 24. And I do think, there's a number where it does start to impact how people look at the regular season, how we talk about the regular season, maybe even how some teams approach the regular season. And like, for instance, if you go to 24, some of these games that hit, like Ohio State, Michigan, just as an example, that's always been Thanksgiving, right? The Saturday after Thanksgiving. Well, in a 2014 playoff era, you really have to think, is that game best positioned at the end of the season when, often both teams would already be, in the playoffs or have clinched their playoff berth? Or would you rather play a game like that early when it feels like it has more meaning? That's just one example of the kind of maybe reimagining of the regular season that I think would have to happen if it goes to 24, because realistically, just so many games are not going to have the same punch that they do now at 12.
Looking at actual football games and actual football season coming up, the Sorsby thing, I don't know if anybody really anticipated that he'd play before the judge then said he could. And then, of course, obviously that thing went away. But Texas Tech was considered to be the forefront of the Big 12, especially if Sorsby was playing. Now that he's not, and everybody's kind of waiting on Will Hammond to see how well he'll perform and how healthy he is at the start of the season. Where would you put BYU as your number one in the Big 12, or still keep Texas Tech there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that Texas Tech, especially on defense, is going to be quite as robust as they were a year ago when they were really, really very good.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, their talent was unbelievable on that side of the ball. I think they're probably downgraded a bit there. The quarterback situation, I just don't know. We've seen a little bit of Hammond, not enough for me to make a definitive statement about what anybody should expect, although I do think they're comfortable with him as the starter. And, I was maybe not quite as high individually on Sorsby as some other people. So I'd maybe default a little bit to Texas Tech. I just have a hard time these days getting my arms around what to expect from almost any team because of the transfer portal and the newness that you tend to get. I mean, yeah, there's some carryover year to year, but it just really feels like everything's up for grabs. And, you look a couple years ago, just as an example, in the Big 12, Arizona State comes out of absolute nowhere to win the conference. Nobody saw it coming, but they did a great job in the portal. And there's always going to be teams like that, that especially in a league like the Big 12 where, maybe the high end is not dominant. It's maybe a little bit more parity in that league, like you could see some crazy results. And so, yeah, I mean, BYU, Texas Tech, you put them in the bucket up top with maybe a couple other teams. I do think Arizona State's got a chance to be good. Arizona should be good again. But, yeah, I don't know that Sorsby is a total game changer for me.
Obviously, around here, we got used to rinse, repeat. Kyle Whittingham at Utah, 21 years, loaded the team up and go do it. And we've got a new coach here, and obviously Kyle's got a new job. Comments on, I guess, first Utah, your thoughts on Utah with Morgan Scalley taking over, and then, what you've seen and heard from Kyle Whittingham out there at Michigan thus far.
Well, I would say to start with, the overriding thing about Utah is it's just going to be strange, I think, to experience Utah without Kyle on the sideline. And he'd been there for so long, and certainly for me, almost my whole time in the business, really. I mean, I remember covering a game during Urban's, last year there when I was really, really young, and now I'm not so young anymore. So
join the club, dude. It happens.
Yeah, and Kyle's been there the whole time, right? So it's kind of weird. Obviously, Utah's got a lot of confidence in Morgan Scalley. I mean, we'll see, right? This guy's never been a head coach before, so hard to predict. But interesting times in Utah. A lot of changes. The private equity piece that's kind of transforming the department. Like They're on the radar for a lot of different reasons at this point. And then as far as Kyle, I haven't heard much, really. I mean, it's been quiet. There's been a lot of other things going on in Michigan over the last few months. And really, he's probably, kind of enjoyed laying low a little bit. I think they've sort of been the beneficiary of not having the spotlight specifically on football. Now, obviously, that starts to change. Because we're at Big Ten Media Days, or I'm not physically there, but that's the point in the calendar this week, and so we'll have more expectation on Michigan and sort of what to think. But I thought it was a good move overall by Michigan to kind of bring in a steady, experienced guy. I don't necessarily expect him to be in the job for 7-8 years or anything like that, but why would Kyle Whittingham not do a good job in Michigan? It would shock me.
So, Dan, I mentioned my connection to Utah State. They're part of this newfangled Pac-12, which is, essentially Mountain West 2.0. And I've been talking to a lot of guys, New Mexico, UNLV, guys that stayed put. And the thought is, it's like, okay, we're going to go through the motions on this, but ultimately we're probably all going to be together again here very soon. In this whole reshuffling thing that I think we all anticipate 2030, 2031, do you feel like we're going to, at least a little bit of common sense will prevail and we'll get a little bit back to more geographical sense?
Common sense in college sports. That's a tough bet to make.
I know.
I think you've heard more coming out lately as people have tried to reimagine and rethink what college sports should look like to try to get back to a semblance of normalcy. You have heard a lot more about geographically based conferences for non-revenue sports, kind of decoupling everything from football, which honestly would be great. There's no reason why volleyball teams and softball teams and, in these mega conferences where everybody should be flying 3 time zones. That doesn't make a lot of sense for sports that don't really make a lot of money. I don't know where it's all going to lead. I thought the Pac-12 raiding the Mountain West and kind of only taking the parts they wanted. I thought it was kind of silly, to be honest with you, because it's basically just the Mountain West, right? Yeah. It's the Mountain West with Washington State and Oregon State. So what have you really accomplished? There's not been very good transparency on the media deals, to figure out if it's really significantly more money for these schools. So we don't really know that yet. I don't know. I honestly believe a lot of administrators at a school like Utah State, and a lot of these Mountain West schools looked at it like a branding thing.
Yes,
like going to the
100%.
Pac-12 is better for branding because people remember the Pac-12 as from the way it was. I don't necessarily believe that. I think people look at the collection of schools and say it's the same. So good luck, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, just good luck, right?
Well, no, I wasn't necessarily talking about just, the Mountain West in general, but, you feel like there is kind of this surge, and maybe it's just me wishful thinking that, we get back to UCLA and USC not playing in Rutgers, something that makes a little bit more sense.
Well,
but you're right. Common sense doesn't seem to reign supreme these days.
Well, like USC and UCLA are not going back to the Pac-12. Like,
no. I get that.
You know what I mean? So maybe if the Big Ten expands, like they bring in a Stanford or whatever to try to, balance it a little bit more geographically. But I just think, like, with these mega conferences, the hay's kind of out of the barn, and like they're going to be what they are for the most part. And it's stupid to have these conferences going all the way across the country, but this is the result of bad planning, bad leadership, greed. Like, you can just throw every bad thing in there, and we sort of end up with this Frankenstein system.
The fact that a Tennessee player has to miss the first two games because of a $490 flight, it almost feels like the NCAA is like, hey, we're still here. We can still do things. And they're taking it out on this dude for, probably a Southwest flight paid by his agent, which just, that Coach mentioned earlier in the show, like, this is why we are where we're at today, is because of dumb things like this.
Well, I saw that headline, and I was thinking, like, did I just wake up in a time machine to go back to 2012?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you would see regularly back then. Somebody, a guy named Gene Marsh, who was on the Committee on Infractions for quite a long time, he always had a great analogy that NCAA enforcement is, it's like Goldilocks. The pudding is either a little bit, too hot, or it's a little too cold, and it's never quite just right. And that has always kind of been the case with the NCAA and some of these punishments. They've been so, they got bullied into not enforcing any rules for the last several years. And now they maybe feel like they can enforce some rules, so maybe they're going over the top again, and the pendulum's swinging back to, the porridge is too hot. That's my only explanation, because it does not seem like the punishment fits the crime, given the context of what's going on in the real world of college athletics right now.
So back to the field, is there a team that is either being talked about a bunch or not talked about enough that you got your eye on for the upcoming season?
Interesting question. I was just at SEC Media Days last week, and I was kind of taken aback by just how little buzz there was around Alabama. I remember back in the day, you would go cover SEC Media Days, and Alabama Day was, there was a little extra energy in the air, and, it always felt big. And Kalen DeBoer has kind of made it feel small, and not because he's a bad coach or whatever, but he's more like low key, and he's not the big personality. And his first 2 years they've been okay, and last year they kind of stumble into the playoffs. And so I'm just curious, like, what is Alabama football now, and what's it going to be going forward? And is Kalen DeBoer the guy? And like all of these things, and I feel like this is it's a big year in terms of trajectory and the way fans are going to react to him. And obviously he just got a contract extension, and the school's trying to protect him from the pressure of all that. But it can take on a life of its own. Like, it's going to be really interesting to see, because I don't know what to expect from them.
Well, Dan, appreciate your time. Good stuff as always. Looking forward to catching up with you down the line.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks.
You got it, Dan Wolken. He does a tremendous job at Yahoo Sports.
Was at USA Today for a long time. I've read him forever, so it was awesome to have him on the show. Be able to talk to him.
So my grandpa, when he would yell at you, he'd always go, "You crazy yahoos, knock it off." So every time I reintroduce somebody with Yahoo, I almost say Yahoo, just because that's what my grandpa would say. Like when he's coming at you with his belt, like, "Get over here, you Yahoo." I'm like, that always gets me a little PTSD there. But Yahoo Sports.
Now I know how to get your attention when you're not paying attention to me.
Yahoo! You bunch of yahoos.
Grandpa was a good dude, though.
Grandpa, you know what? Grandpa could come from the grave right now and walk through the door, and he would still scare the bejeebers out of me.
Is this Richard's father?
Yes.
What's his first name?
Melvin.
Love the name.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a Melvin in my lineage.
Do you really?
Mm-hmm. I do. I have a Melvin. My father, actually, who is no longer with us, but he was given the name Harvey, but his middle name was Keith, so he went with that. Well, he left the Harv alone.
Oh, my oldest brother is actually Melvin, but his middle name is Kurt, and nobody calls him Melvin.
Well, just get me in front of him, and we'll give it a crack.
I don't know if that's probably such a good idea.
I walk in and say, "Dick, Melvin, how we doing?" No?
Yeah,
okay.
I'd probably avoid that one. All right, 12:25. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Locked on to Scotty G and the coach, Tim LaComb. Presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. 12:31. Lloyd Cole on vacation, so he has forfeited his right to create the playlist. He actually did send one in, but...
He had the guile.
Yeah. Be like...
I'm not going to be there at the party,
but I still want my music played.
If you guys could save me some of the pizza and just put it in the microwave when I get back.
Yeah, I won't help you move, but if they do give you some pizza for helping everybody move, then if you could bring that back, that would be awesome.
We give our guy a hard time. We love him. Don't get us wrong. And I did see some really cool pictures you posted yesterday with the boys.
Yep.
Looks like they're having a ball.
At his cabin, his palatial estate.
Is it in Wyoming?
I believe so, yeah. Well, he's...
Boys were in full Western regalia.
Yeah, even wearing the gloves.
Got work to do out. I'm sure he's got them out there like fixing fences or something on vacation.
I would hope so. Because, you got to put those kids to work, man.
Well, if they don't, they'll end up like him. Because he never works.
With zero work ethic.
Zero work ethic and high expectations.
Oh, man. All right. So, by the way, we had a chance, and I want to replay some of this. I know I'm putting Alex on the spot, but we had a chance to chat with Tony Jones a little bit yesterday. And I want to replay that conversation, at least a portion of that, because Tony Jones just got thrown right to the wolves, man. Just absolutely his world turned upside down, and LeBron James is now part of Philadelphia 76ers. Tony Jones, the beat writer for the Athletic for the Philadelphia 76ers, took that job and thinking, okay, look, I'm going to deal with Paul George in a bad contract, and I'm going to deal with Joel Embiid in the 20 games he plays, and that'll be it. No. All of a sudden, now he's got a title contender on his hands, and LeBron and the circus that comes along with it. I'm very fascinated to see how this team is out of the gate and how they're playing come March, April, because I got to imagine they'll ramp up to the end of the season.
I'm excited that we have a relationship with Tony, that we have him on, and he will be able to give us stuff on on how all this goes down all year long. So that will be awesome. He talked about it yesterday, told his wife, not going to be there for Christmas, be really busy, but it's awesome we have an inside line to What is the biggest story in the NBA, since LeBron made the decision?
There's our conversation with the great Tony Jones. Philadelphia had a good roster. They had, I think Mike Gansey might be the executive of the year, and he hasn't even been with the team for a single regular season game yet.
Executive of the year off of
Paul George
1 month. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you look at this, if you look at this off season, and you look at what Gansey and Jameer Nelson, because Jameer Nelson's had a really big part in this. If you look at what those two guys have done, not only did they get the big stuff right, like obviously the Jaylen Brown trade, and then LeBron. I don't want to say falls in their laps because they really worked on the recruitment of him, but they got the small stuff right. They kind of stole Anthony Simons from the Miami Heat. That he was supposed to go to Miami, and Jameer pulled off a really, really good recruiting job to get Anthony to sign with the Sixers. And Dean Wade, that was Gansey all the way because those two had a relationship headed back to Cleveland. KCP is LeBron, so we got to give LeBron credit, KCP. But if you look at those two ways, Gansey and Jamil signed Caleb Love and Ryan Rupert, both the two ways. Both of those guys played real NBA minutes last year. Caleb Love for Portland. We know Caleb Love because he played for Arizona. And Ryan Rupert from Memphis. He had a 30-point triple-double in Memphis back in March. So, all up and down the roster, there weren't real. There was a dearth of real NBA players through the depth parts of the roster last year when it came to the Sixers, and they've got real NBA players and real NBA rotation players up and down the roster this year.
What have you been able to glean from the recruiting process and kind of what it went into it? I know LeBron had made comments about things that were important to him, but the way I look at this, I mean, this was his best chance to win for sure.
Well, Joel Embiid promised LeBron that he'd be in shape.
There you go.
That happened. And I'm sure the Sixers fans are now like, so what about the other 11 years? But, that's neither here nor there. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
We had it yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So there was that. But listen, LeBron has been long fond of Tyrese Maxey and vice versa. Those two guys, have worked out for a long time with the same trainer, Chris Johnson. They actually got a workout in yesterday together, and they have been not really talking about playing together because it really didn't seem like it was an obvious thing that would happen. But there's the clutch connection with them as well as with Nick Nurse, obviously KCP. But Tyrese Maxey has been somebody that LeBron has admired for a long time, and I can see LeBron, using Maxey the way that he did, 10 years ago with Kyrie Irving when they were with Cleveland. So, I think that LeBron will be good for Tyrese, and I think that Tyrese will be good for LeBron. And I think that, when you look at Tyrese last year and you watched him last year, yeah, he had a great season, but he was doing it with, teams, really keyed into stopping him. And he's going to have space in, people drawing gravity away from him this year, kind of like he hasn't had in a few years.
So Miami's Miami. It's, a gorgeous place to play, especially if you're wealthy. You got the weather, the city of Miami. You've got the nostalgia factor of Cleveland. Philadelphia look, it's not the best city to live in terms of weather. It has no real emotional connection. It's, I guess, somewhat close to New York, so I guess you can talk about some ties to the Big Apple. But other than that, this seems like it was just about winning for LeBron.
Yeah. The Sixers had the best roster and the best chance for him to win. The only other roster that gave him that kind of chance to win, in my opinion, would have been Minnesota. We all know he wasn't going to Minnesota.
No.
He is not dragging that documentary crew to Minneapolis. So, I think we all said it, and we were still surprised, but we all said it. Like, listen, if LeBron is actually serious about winning a championship, he's saying this is about winning a championship and about what his best chance of winning is. It's Philadelphia. Miami's roster is incomplete. Davion Mitchell is the point guard. I love off night like a brother, but he's a middling starting point guard. They have a lack of shooting, and then Cleveland has James Harden, and I know LeBron ain't trying to hitch his wagon to James Harden. So if it were about winning, it was Philadelphia. And even under that, guys, I think we were all still shocked that he actually chose Philadelphia because we really underestimated just how much it was about winning. Turned out to be 100% about winning. I thought it was like, 50, 60% winning, couple of percentages where your family wants to live, nostalgia, maybe the opportunity to play with Giannis and, maybe get that roster in enough shape to win in year two. No, it was about winning. And LeBron put his money where his mouth is because he went to Philadelphia, because I think that this is by far the most volatile choice that he could have made. There is a really, really, really high ceiling with the fan base and LeBron about how this can go, but there is a low floor if this doesn't go well.
So back to the elephant in the room, and the elephant would be the 7-foot, 270-pound Joel Embiid, who has played 96 of a possible 246 games in the last 3 years. And, he has had some bad luck with injuries, but I have been one that said he's never been in shape, and I don't know how much he cares. Do you think LeBron can impact that?
Let's put it this way. I mean, if Joel doesn't have his body and, as good a shape as he can possibly get it in this year, is never going to happen. And, this is his best chance to win. Like, the Sixers have this roster has a real chance to win. And I would be surprised if LeBron doesn't play 2 years. I think, I know that the second year is a player option, but I think he's going to give himself 2 years and give himself a chance to really win one. This is a roster that is capable of winning it all. I think it's one of the 4 most talented rosters in the league, and that 4 being, the Knicks, the Sixers, the Thunder, and the Spurs, no particular order. And Joel, I don't think that this team needs Joel Embiid in the regular season. I think that Joel Embiid can play 0 games in the regular season, and this roster can still win 50 games. But I 100% absolutely believe that this team needs Joel Embiid to win a championship. They need him to be a 16-game player and not an 82-game player. Watching him and covering him last year, he is an incredible offensive talent. I mean, he does things for a 7-footer that no 7-footer should ever in a million years be able to do. His body consistently breaks down. There are the lower body injuries. There's, all sorts of health scares. There was an appendectomy, which is just like kind of crazy in terms of how unlucky he has been as well. But this is his chance to really, buckle down, get in shape, stay in shape. He's not going to play 65 games. He's probably not going to play 55 games. But if you can get 50 games out of him, play 50 games and be in as good a shape as humanly possible for a 16-game run, they he has a chance to take this roster to the stratosphere just because of how good, how unique he is offensively. His problem right now is defensively because the lower body injuries have, really robbed him of his lateral movement, and that's really hurt him in pick and roll coverage. And the Knicks really honed in on that in the second round last year, and just kind of put him in a blender at any chance that they could get. So, that's going to be something that the Sixers are going to have to figure out, especially if they get the Knicks at some point in the playoffs, or they get a team that has 5 players like the Knicks who can, just kind of all dribble, pass, and shoot and put you in a blender. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Joel approaches this season.
Relatively healthy Joel Embiid with this 76er team against the Knicks in a 7-game series. How do you feel like that goes?
So last year was a sweep.
Yeah.
I would still probably go Knicks in 7. I think that the Sixers do have some advantages this year, which is mainly like last year, the Knicks could hide Jalen Brunson on Kelly Oubre Jr. and mainly get away with it. And they can't do that this year because of just how many great players are in that lineup. That matchup becomes VJ Eskam, and VJ will cook them. So that becomes a little bit different. There's no Mitch Robinson, and that becomes a little that's going to hurt the Knicks some because them not having Mitch Robinson coming in off the bench, grabbing every single offensive rebound, blocking shots, playing above the rim. And you're replacing that with Andre Drummond. And, I covered Andre last year. Really, really, really nice guy. He's not Mitch Robinson. So a lot more onus is going to go on the Karl Anthony Towns. I would still favor the Knicks and say the Knicks in 7, but that's a much, much, much closer series this year than it was last year.
I've been talking about the problem that Maxey and Edgecombe are for the league, their ability, they're a dynamic crew. You add Jaylen Brown to that. As about as good a guard trio as exists, I think, in the NBA. Yeah. Your thought?
Yeah. I mean, you can go San Antonio with Fox and Harper and Stephen Castle. But outside of that, I mean, Jaylen Brown and Tyrese Maxey and VJ Eskam, that's as good and athletic and dynamic a perimeter trio as you're probably going to get. And I think there's going to be some onus, in my opinion, on, LeBron to just be a playmaker. I think that this is going to be the first time in his NBA life that he does not average 20 points a game in a season. And I think that it's on Joel Embiid to kind of fill in the blanks where needed and let those 3 guys go. Like, let them run, let them cook off the dribble on the perimeter, let them, those guys are durable guys. Let them be regular season innings eaters. And, LeBron and Joel both kind of, fill in the blanks when needed, where needed. And then, those guys can be ready to kind of assert themselves once you get to the playoffs because, Maxey and Jaylen Brown are both in their primes. They're 28-point-per-game scorers last season. VJ Eskam is somebody who I think has a chance to be an all-star in this league. And, and I think it's going to be really incumbent on Nick Nurse to figure out VJ Eskam from the standpoint of, blending him in with, the older guys, but also getting him on-ball reps so that he can develop. Because I always thought that, watching him, he has a chance to one day be Anthony Edwards. And, he's not going to have that kind of runway in terms of on-ball usage, obviously. But they still need to get him enough on-ball usage that he stays on his development path, that he set for himself in his rookie season.
The great Tony Jones with us, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. You've had a chance to watch some Summer League. You saw A.J. DeBonsa. You saw Darren Peterson. You saw some of these other guys. Obviously, people love to overreact over what they saw in the middle of July. But were there some things that you can take away that you can project into the regular season from some of these guys?
Yeah, with Darren, I thought that he was put in a tough spot because he didn't have as many NBA players around him as A.J. DeBonsa and Cameron Boozer. Cameron Boozer had a full lineup of NBA players around him, and at least for that first game, so did A.J. DeBonsa, and Darren Peterson had Cody Williams. So, I think that a lot of people talked about, Darren's turnovers and all of that stuff, but it was just a different deal for him than it's going to be in the regular season. He's obviously going to be surrounded by NBA players in the regular season. He's going to have NBA spacing, and he wasn't afforded that in Summer League. That being said, I thought that Darren showed an amazing ability to get to his spots, real ability to handle the basketball. He showed some passing chops, obviously, in the Salt Lake Summer League. He did some really, really good things this summer. A.J. DeBonsa, I don't think that, we've seen a physical force come into the league from the small forward spot in a while. I mean, he's even more of a physical force than Cooper Flagg is in terms of, rim pressure, playing above the rim and just doing things 6'9", 6'10", that guys his size should not be doing. And Cameron Boozer is as advertised, just a really great intellectual thinker on the floor, terrific rebounder, really skilled, had one of the best summer leagues out of anybody in the NBA. So, it's quite the top three, and I really, really, I'm really looking forward to seeing them translate to the regular season.
There he is, Tony Jones, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Fun conversation with him. And by the way, just for the record, he did say he's still going to come on with us throughout the season.
Yes, he did, and he will be giving us, updates from the goings-on of Philly with LeBron, and everybody's super excited about it. And I think the biggest thing that came out of that, he agreed with me, Embiid's got to be good. Embiid's got to play. Embiid's got to be in shape. And he's promised LeBron he will.
Oh, I'm sure. Everybody can make big promises in July. What happens when everybody shows up in late September for camp?
There's some, it was like my first day when you're like, dude, you're going to do all the streaming thing. You got to drop 20. So I've gotten in line.
12:52. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Sports radio in Utah is right here, right here. This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim LaComb, on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Alex is patiently waiting for me to give away tickets. He's asked me like 5 times, and I keep forgetting. And that's my bad, because really, Coach and I were just kind of hoping that everybody would forget, and we would take those tickets to go see the Black Crows. But no, we got to give them away to you, the listener.
Fine, Alex.
Caller number 12, 801-575-ZONE. That's 801-575-ZONE. Will win 2 tickets to the Black Crows. Hey, little thing, let me light your candle because I'm so hot to handle now. Yes, I am. With special guest Whiskey Myers to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on Thursday, August 13th. Tickets on sale at livenation.com. You can get your tickets right now, or you can also be caller number 12 and get tickets. Again, 801-575-ZONE.
Remedy. That's my tune.
Yeah? Such a great band. Great band. I can't, look, if they have any amount of the juice that they had in the late 80s and early 90s, that's going to be one hell of a show.
I guarantee they will. I'm going to be there. I'm going to find a way there. Point me in the direction.
Yeah.
Of the amphitheater.
look, get off your cell phone. You can't be caller 12.
Oh, gosh. I thought I'd change my voice like I did the other day with Bo Nix is a bum.
Bo Nix is a bum.
I will call one time and win and say to Lloyd, tell me where the tickets are first.
Oh, yeah. Lloyd loves that. He's always a big fan.
Yeah, take your tickets.
He's like, you're caller number 12. Congratulations. Before you give me the tickets, are they lower bowl or upper bowl?
And he's like,
all right, you're done. Yeah, that's no go. All right, 1 o'clock coming up next. We'll get a preview of the Kansas Jayhawks. Henry Greenstein will join us. We'll chat with him about KU, what to expect from the Jayhawks in the upcoming season, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.